That way it moves flat.
Lift your grass up and put the grass.
So we'll talk about the second one first, and then we'll go back to the first one. So the second one was the new John Deere walking greens mower, and the fact that it actually floats independent. The one that we've seen in Todd's demonstration is called a Flex 21, and Toro came out with the first flexing machine where the cutting unit flexes independent of the drum that's in the back. So the one that you guys are operating, the drum and the reel, it's all one rigid unit. John Deere or Toro came out with the Flex 21. It's 21 inches wide, and the cutting unit flexes independent, and then it gave it more ability to contour and follow the ground and do a better job of cutting without scalping the ground. And then John Deere followed, and they came out with theirs, and they've improved. So the Flex 21's been out 15 years or more. I mean, it's been out a long time. And John Deere came out with theirs, and this is just their latest version. That particular mower that you just looked at is going to be easy 10 grand. And then you start adding all those brushes and the GTC or the brush to knock the roller clean or any of those other pieces and options on there. I mean, they're just cha-ching, cha-ching. You're just adding price tag to it. And so if I'm a golf course and we believe in walking greens mowers and that's the mower we're going to have, you're looking at $10,000+ a piece, and you're going to have at least 10 of them just to mow the greens. You're going to have $100,000 just walking greens mowers. If you're going to have riding lawnmowers, the riding lawnmower or the riding greens mower that you've seen there, which is their hybrid, that one's about $26,000. Again, you're going to have 3 to 7 of those. So, I mean, just to mow the greens, you're looking at $100,000 plus to do that. So it's a very expensive industry, but you can see, I mean, they're working more and more to make it easier for the operator and to make the grass look better. So the latest craze really is stuff that's operated by electricity. So that one had an electric motor. So you have an engine that runs an alternator, and then there's an electric motor running the reel. So it's not belt driven or gear driven like the ones that we're operating. That one's got a wire down there, and it allows it to flex independent without wires and cables and all that other stuff. You just have a simple little bundle of wires going down, and that's it. So that flexibility comes with modern technology in electric motors. And right after they came out with brushless motors, which were super efficient and they work really well. The first ones weren't brushless, and there was a lot of problems with them, so they've gone to brushless. Great technology. It allows you to run the engine lower RPMs. It's quieter, it's more fuel efficient. When you're mowing around houses at dark 30 in the morning, instead of out there and wham, you just lay loud, these engines now run really low. So they're just barely running, turning an alternator, and then we can actually control the voltage with the little knob and control reel speed and mow at the same speed that a normal mechanical machine is doing, but at a lower RPM. So it's more efficient, it's quieter, so that when you're around houses and stuff, then you're not disturbing people. And you're going to be doing it, you know. How many people want to be woke up at 5 in the morning by a guy going bzz, 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 back and forth across the green? They get pretty upset. So now you can go out there and actually mow, and you can't even hear the machines. So technology is constantly changing. You've seen that there's a little diagnostic light. There's little computers on some of these mowers. Most of these mowers have some kind of computer that monitors it, and then something goes wrong or records what's wrong, and you can tap into it, tells you, where the issue is. So very sophisticated and pretty expensive. So, but you notice, one thing that you should have noticed when he was doing all that mowing, was there anything different between what he was doing when he mowed and what you're doing with the $4,000 ones that you're mowing with? He still walked behind it. He still has to do a teardrop. He's still going to gently lay it on. He's still going to have his walking pattern still going to be the same. So as far as an operator, you operate exactly the same. Everything that you learn exactly the same with a $10,000 machine as you would with a $4,000 machine. you're still gonna mow exactly the same. It's just the machine you're running is a lot different. So, kind of cool. What was the first video about? One before that.
Bench heights.
So bench height, they're talking about bench height versus
Cutting height.
effective height, right? So effective height is actual, when you go out there to mow the grass, what height is the grass really versus what it is when it's sitting here on a table. And so as a technician, when we're setting up a cutting unit, we're going to be using some kind of instrument, gauge bar, something to actually check the height. Superintendent says we want that at 3/8 of an inch, or we want it at 90 thousandths of an inch. We have a tool that reads down to thousandths of an inch, and we set that at 90 thousandths of an inch. When you go out there on the golf course and you're actually mowing, are we really mowing at 90 thousandths of an inch? Most of the time we are not. Most of the time we're going to mow at some other height other than 90 thousandths of an inch. So if we're not truly mowing at 90 thousandths of an inch, you know, how are we actually doing what the superintendent wants? And it really comes down to the fact that when the operator, the superintendent goes out there and looks at his golf green, if he likes the way it looks, and you told him it was at 90 thousandths, he's going to just use it as a reference point. 90 thousandths, your point, you know, you say it's set at apples. Okay, well, apples looks good, so set it at apples again. Okay, tomorrow I want it at oranges. Okay, oranges look good, set it at orange. It doesn't matter what he said, but you said 90 thousandths. He looked at it. It looked really nice at 90 thousandths. It played really nice at 90 thousandths. Whether it's exactly 90 thousandths or not doesn't matter. If the playability, if the quality of cut looks great at your 90 thousandths, we're staying with that. Let's stay with that reference point. And so, but the reality is when I go out there with my cutting unit, when you watch that mower, that second one, when you watched it drive by, do you notice how long it was? When they put all those attachments and then they put a basket and then they put a brush out there, do you notice how much longer it looks compared to the ones that you guys operated? It's like, it looked like a little boat thing sticking out there. Well, every time you add one of those attachments that are optional pieces, you add weight. Every time I add weight to a cutting unit, I have an operator, nice young operator that's, you know, 135 pounds, and then I put an operator that's 400 pounds. Do you think it's going to operate different? Same thing with a riding and walking greens mower. Every time I put one of those options on it, the physical cutting unit weighs more. It's going to sink into the grass more, and the more options I put on there, the shorter the grass is going to be. And so you're going to compensate. As a technician, you're going to set it at 90 thousandths. And then you add all these attachments and you set it at 90 thousandths, you take it out there and the superintendent's like, whoa, wow, that thing's cutting way too short. Grass is getting stressed, we need to raise the height of cut. So you're going to raise the height of cut because you're compensating for the weight. At the end of the day, I raised the cutting unit from 90 thousandths to 110 thousandths. Now it's taller. And then you go out there with a measuring device, which they use a tool called a prism gauge, and you actually measure it. It may still be at 90 thousandths, even though I set it at 110 thousandths, because the weight of the cutting unit is pushing me back down to that shorter height of cut. And so anytime that you operate, you would never operate two different brands of mowers, or even two mowers set up different on the same golf green. Because if you did, if the weights were slightly different, if the operators were holding the handle up or pushing it down, you would see the difference in variation between the two operators, even with two identical machines. So typically you go out, one mower is on this machine or this golf, and one machine is on there. So you don't go out and run side by side very often. So, because then if there's any variations, you'll pick it up. So, a lot of differences in machines. That's the job of the technician, is to make sure that he reduces the variations. When you get out on the golf green, I want them to look identical. And there's things that the technician would do to actually make that look the same. And as a superintendent, there's a lot of tools that you can do. The brush, by just running a brush along the top of the grass, you'll stand the grass up and then cut it off. So it makes it a more smooth, more uniform cut. When I was at Waverly, we would walk mow the greens, and then they would come back and use a riding lawnmower, and we would cut it again with a riding greens mower. And they were set at the same height. We bench set them at the same height. So if you cut it, and then what they call it, double cut. So we come back with a riding greens mower. Should you cut any grass? You would think no, because I already cut it at 90. I shouldn't come back and cut it again and get any grass. But when they came back with a rider, they would get baskets full of grass again. Partly because you don't get all the grass, partly because maybe with different brushes or something we stand it up better, and we're going to cut the stragglers that we missed. And partly because a riding greens mower is heavier and it actually cuts just a hair lower. So it was a combination of different things. But if there was a tournament, they would double cut all the greens. When we got done, they would roll it. So in the very first film, they showed the guy that was sitting on a seat, and it was like a long object, and he was just kind of moving. That's called a roller, and we have one of those. You guys are going to experience that soon. And so the roller is two rollers that run across, and the idea is we're trying to take that surface, that imperfection of the surface, and smooth them out. And the smoother the surface is, the easier the ball rolls across the golf green. And so we're trying to make that golf ball roll really easy so that when you're playing golf, it never stays on the green. You always want to be able to touch the ball and have it roll off into a bunker. Okay, we don't always want that, but that's the idea, is you want to make it harder to play, so the easier the ball rolls, the more difficult the game is. And so they have a stimp meter. So they talk about stimp meters, which is, how far does the ball roll when it stops? And we'll see what a stimp meter is later on. But there's a gauge on playability. You can actually smooth the golf green out with tall grass and still have the same stimp reading as short grass that's really rough. So running a roller across and just smoothing out, and at night when you water, you have worms in the ground. The worms crawl up there and they kind of come out of the ground. Well, they leave all their little pieces of stalones or whatever they call that stuff, little pieces of dirt sticking up. Well, that's going to affect how the ball rolls. So when you roll it with a roller, it smashes all that down and makes it a smooth surface. So I can actually raise my height of cut and roll it and still get the same playability as somebody that cuts it short with rough ground. Ours down there is what we consider really rough ground. And once we get the roller down and we run that roller across a couple of times, you'll see that walk behind greens mower, when you lay it down, it'll actually be much better. So we'll try to get it down maybe this Friday and add that into our equipment line. So there's lots of tools that technicians or superintendents will actually use to actually make the game enjoyable. And that's what you're trying to do, is make your customers happy. So it's just a whole different industry. So any questions about what that is? So it's just terms and stuff, things that you will notice, things that happen, just to kind of make you aware of things that are happening on a golf course. Okay? We're going to stop again.